What should we call our or what shall we call us? Circle Guy? The Vanguard? Darkness? Oh wait, that's already taken. Mighty Morphin Lawsuit? Oh, how about Radiant Black? Welcome to A Fifth of Jack Gaming, where today we're going to be doing a nice overview of a book, and it may have been given away. But before we end up doing that, go visit our channel sponsor, Organic Price Books, where you can use the code of Fifth of Jack to save $2 off. If you have 4 or more books, rock it out with the code Jacket Together to save 5% off your entire order instead. Orders over $30 get free shipping. That way you can end up seeing how bomb-proof OPB shipping is. You also, lately they have something that's being shipped with peanuts. If you don't like getting the peanuts, send them a message letting them know that, hey, I don't like getting the peanuts. And they'll just say on your little account to not include the peanuts and be able to ship it the regular way that they end up shipping it. With that said, let's jump on over and cover Radiant Black Massive Edition. Radiant Black, the Massive Edition, is going to end up covering 12 different issues that's in this. This is over by Kyle Higgins, Marcelo Costa, and Becca Carey. So this is going to be a nice, solid story that you're going to end up seeing. But before I end up giving our final thoughts about it, let's go through the book and give you a good synopsis of what we end up having with this story. So how we're going to end up doing that, we're going to have a nice little voiceover that's going to be talking about it as we go through the book. And here we go. Get introduced to the character of Nathan, who has a problem with adulting, has a whole load of credit card debt, and due to this load of credit card debt, he has to end up moving back home to be able to help out with it. He's a starving artist that comes over with it, and he ends up running into his friend Marshall from high school, and in that process, they end up going to the bar, and they ended up eventually finding this power. In the experience with the railroad tracks, we end up finding out that he has the powers to be able to pick up stuff. And then we fast forward to the next day, where we end up having the cops knocking over to it because someone has been doing some bank robbing. It is later discovered that this is Radiant Red, and then we also end up finding an ordinance to Radiant Red before we end up going over to that. And then we end up having a big drama and a big rift between Radiant Red and Radiant Black, where they ended up having to find, well, I should say, Nathan goes over and does some detective work to find out where the location of Radiant Red is. In that process, they end up finding it out, and they end up duking it out, where they end up going over, fighting one another. Then we're going to fast forward to where we end up having Radiant Black ended up doing some training, trying to figure it out, but then Radiant Red ends up finding it, and this is where we end up having a big old fight between the two, where a building does end up collapsing over onto Radiant Black in a way to be able to save everyone. But he ends up being discovered that he's alive. But the Radiant Black ends up going over and switching off from Nathan and onto Marshall, who ends up becoming the host of the Radiant Black. It is important to be saying that they end up finding Nathan and bringing him over, and he's barely alive. He goes into a coma, and that's where that ends up with the Nathan train. But we continue on with the Marshall train. We find out that Marshall learned how to use the Radiant Black a lot quicker than what Nathan was ended up learning it, and we end up finding out that he ends up going over seeking out Radiant Red in retribution of the entire damage that was done to his best friend. And then, in the process of them brawling with one another, we get exposed to a couple different Radiants, which are Radiant Yellow and Radiant Pink. And they coming over trying to warn them about a big villain that is coming down to be able to take over the world and destroy his world. Also, it's important to be saying how this is a sentient being, like, that's giving them a language that's all talking to them throughout the entire process of them having the sentient or having the Radiant Black that's teaching them, trying to unlock more abilities that goes along with it. I know it's something that we should have been talking about before, but that's why I ended up going over. But I did go right back to the storyline where we ended up having them getting teleported to a bunch of different ways. And we ended up eventually having the big villain meeting up with them, I believe in Tokyo, where we end up seeing the Radiant Black actually take control and bring in this evil villain right into the Radiant Black itself. Then we end up seeing some bonding that comes over with it. We also get more lore that comes over with that, with Radiant Yellow and Radiant Pink coming back together and explaining it. Where we end up finding out that Radiant Pink is a streamer that was trying to get the mic fixed, who was by the Radiant Yellow. Some craziness that ensues. Alright, we're going to stop there. That way, if you want to be looking at the covers, you got to pick up the book or go visit Hoopla or any other platform that ends up having it on there and be able to read it there. So, we'll switch it on back and give our final thoughts about Radiant Black, Volume 1, Massive Edition. So, this is a book that has some cool action, a bunch of good art, and it has some prototypical changes with the comic book layout. It's a solid way that you end up having, and it's also inspired off from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. However, it does have a big upgrade that comes over with it. If you look over at the faces, they actually emote that you can end up seeing different expressions that comes over with it. That's definitely an upgrade that you end up seeing over the Power Rangers. However, each different Radiant has a different power set that comes over with it, which is very unique that comes over. Some are from a different universe, some are from this universe. But all of them are nice and neat. In this story, we mainly ended up getting to see Radiant Black, and we ended up seeing it progress over with it. But you also see Radiant Red that's also featured in there. You also have Radiant Pink and Radiant Yellow. But they're a little bit towards the end of the story. So, what would we rank this book? Well, I'm going to give it a solid 9. I loved the art. I loved the style with it. And once I actually got to sit down and actually read it, it was stellar. I ended up reading it all in one day. It's a very stellar way of with it, and with it being a nice, big, deluxe copy that you end up having, it's very nice, sturdy, and very well built, and you end up having it all right there. And it also had the features of the extra covers that you end up having, and believe me, there's a lot of extra covers that's going to be inside this book. Have you read this book? Let us know down in the comments down below. And then if you're liking the content that we're putting out, like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon to be notified whenever we come out with new content. And remember, if you want to pick this up, you can go visit organicpricebooks.com, use the code of FifthJack to save $2 off. If you have 4 or more books, use the code JackItTogether to save 5% off in your entire order instead. We'll also have a link down in the description for you get to Organic Price Books, and we'll also have a link to the book itself. Without further ado, thank you for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.